I welcome you all to this news analysis initiative. These are the articles that are important from UPSC perspective. Without any further delay, we will move on to the first one. Please excuse my voice today. I'm not feeling well and have a bad cold. So the first article for the day is with new bill demand-led job scheme set to turn supply-driven. So, what is this new bill about? The government plans to replace MNREGA with a new law called Vikshit Bharat Guarantee for Rozgar and Ajivika Mission Gramin Bill. So, first, the name itself changes. MNREGA, a rights based employment guarantee law, is now changed to VB Gramji Bill, a mission based scheme. And the biggest shift is from demand driven to supply driven. So, under MNREGA, any rural household could demand work. The government was legally bound to provide it. Budget could be increased based on demand. Under the new bill, work will be provided only where the center decides, and budget will be fixed in advance. And employment depends on central allocation, not people's demand. This fundamentally changes the nature of the scheme. The next is the work days. Guaranteed work days increase from 100 to 125, but only in center notified rural areas, and scheme can be passed during peak agricultural seasons. So more days on paper but less certainty on the ground. And next is the cost sharing. Under MNREGA, center paid 100% of labor wages, center paid 75% of material cost. So the effective sharing was like 90% by center and 10% by states. Under VB Gramji Bill, 90 is to 10 ratio is only for northeastern states, Himalayan states and union territories, and 60 is to 40 for all other states. This sharply increases states' financial burden. The next is the center gets more control. Under section 4, center decides state-wise budget allocation based on objective parameters which are not defined yet. Next, under section 5, center will notify which rural areas get the scheme. States and gram panchayats are losing that flexibility. And the technology has been made mandatory now, like mobile app based attendance, geotagging of work sites, and digital monitoring. These were earlier administrative tools for convenience, now they are written into the law itself. So, what the critics are saying, the scheme moves away from a rights based guarantee. Rural workers lose the legal right to demand work, and states lose autonomy but bear higher costs, seen as a retreat from the original spirit of MNREGA. Okay, the next article for the day is Bill to allow private sector to make run nuclear plants. There was another article in page 12. I'm combining both these articles and giving a holistic one. So, what is the Shanti Bill 2025? The Shanti Bill 2025 is a new law introduced by the Union government to open up India's nuclear power sector to private and foreign companies. Shanti stands for Sustainable Harnessing and Advancement of Nuclear Energy for Transforming India. Which law does it replace? The bill replaces two old laws, Atomic Energy Act 1962 and Civil Liability for Nuclear Damage Act 2010. These old laws kept nuclear power largely under government control and discouraged private investment. Now, why was this bill needed now? Nuclear power currently makes up only about 1.5% of India's installed power capacity. India wants clean, stable energy to meet its net zero target by 2070. The goal is to increase nuclear capacity from 8.8 gigawatts now to 100 gigawatts by 2047. And private and foreign companies were reluctant earlier due to strict liability rules and monopoly control. So, what are the key changes introduced in the Shanti Bill? The first is it ends the government monopoly. It removes the exclusive control of Nuclear Power Corporation of India Limited and allows private Indian and foreign companies to build and operate nuclear plants. The second is the new regulatory structure, gives statutory status to the Atomic Energy Regulatory Board, makes the regulator answerable to Parliament, improving transparency and accountability. Number three, it changes nuclear liability rules, limits when plant operators can claim compensation from equipment suppliers, aligns India's liability framework with global nuclear conventions, and addresses long standing concerns of foreign suppliers. Number four, it caps operator liability, limits penalties based on plant size. Even for a severe breach, the maximum penalty is capped at rupees 1 crore. This reduces fear of unlimited financial risk for operators. Number 5, strengthens safety framework, improves provisions related to nuclear safety and security, emergency preparedness and quality assurance. And there is also safeguards and regulatory oversight. Now, how does it support future nuclear expansion? This supports India's 20,000 crore mission for small modular reactors, and it also encourages development of 220 megawatt pressurized heavy water reactors, and it promotes innovation, patents and private sector R&D in nuclear technology. To put in simple terms, the Shanti Bill liberalizes nuclear power, it balances investment friendliness with safety, it aims to make nuclear energy a major pillar of India's clean energy transition, it supports India's long term goals of energy security, climate action, and grid stability. In the next article for the day, trade deficit falls to 6.6 billion in November. Okay, what happened to India's trade deficit in November? In November, India's trade deficit fell sharply to $6.6 billion. That's a 61% drop, which is a very big improvement. Now, why did this happen? There are two main reasons. First, exports went up strongly. India's total exports rose by 15.5%, reaching $74 billion. Within this, the merchandise exports, physical goods, jumped by 19.4% to $38.1 billion. This was the highest November export figure in the last 10 years. So, that is a very important one. Number two, imports came down slightly. Total imports fell marginally to $80.6 billion. Merchandise imports dropped to $62.7 billion, mainly because gold imports fell sharply. And India's exports to the US grew by 22.6 percentage compared to last year, reaching $6.98 billion. This indicates that India-US trade relations are doing well despite global uncertainties. So what does this mean overall? Strong exports reduced the trade gap. Lower gold imports helped control imports. And concerns raised after weak October data have eased now, and India's external trade position looks much healthier as of now. The next article for the day, Raj Kumar Goyal takes oath as Chief Information Commissioner. I'll take this opportunity to discuss more about Chief Information Commissioner. Okay. The Chief Information Commission is an independent statutory body created under the Right to Information Act 2005. Its main job is to ensure transparency and accountability in the functioning of the central government. So, in simple words, when citizens ask for information and don't get it, the CIC is a final authority to hear their complaints and appeals. So what does the CIC do? It hears appeals and complaints related to RTI request. It deals with central ministries, departments, PSUs, banks and union territories. It ensures that public authorities share information as required by law. So what is the legal status? It is a statutory body, not a constitutional body. It is established under Section 12 of the RTI Act 2005. So what is the composition? One Chief Information Commissioner and up to 10 Information Commissioners. These commissioners are appointed by the President of India based on recommendations of a selection committee consisting of the Prime Minister, the leader of opposition in the Lok Sabha, and a union cabinet minister nominated by the Prime Minister. Tenure is for 3 years or till 65 years of age, whichever is earlier. There is no reappointment. An information commissioner can become chief information commissioner, but total tenure cannot exceed 5 years. The salary and service conditions are decided by the center, but it cannot be changed to their disadvantage. If you take the removal process, the president can remove a commissioner on grounds like proven misbehavior, incapacity, conviction for an offense involving moral turpitude, financial or conflict of interest violations. See why Chief Information Commission matters for UPSC is it is a pillar of transparency and good governance. It strengthens citizen state accountability, ensures the right to know, which is part of Article 19 Clause 1. The next article for the day, unemployment rate dips to 4.7%. In November, India's unemployment rate fell to 4.7%, which is the lowest since April. This means fewer people were without work compared to previous months. Now, why did unemployment fall? The main reason is that more people entered the labor force, especially in rural areas. The labor force participation rate rose to 55.8%, the highest since April. And this rural labor force participation rate increased to 58.6%, showing more rural people were either working or actively looking for work. So what about cities then? The urban LFPR slightly declined from 50.5 to 50.4%. One of the most important findings is the rise in women joining the workforce. Female LFPR increased from 32% in June to 35.1% in November. This rise is mainly driven by rural women. And the rural female LFPR rose strongly from 35.2% to 39.7%. This shows more women, especially in villages, are working or seeking work. Now, are more people actually working? The answer is yes. The worker population ratio also increased. Rural work population ratio went up from 55.4% to 56.3%. And the rural women's WPR also rose from 36 to 38%, which lifted overall female employment. So this data suggests a gradual but positive trend in employment, with rural India playing a key role. The next article for the day, lawmakers set to debate 100% FDI in insurance proposal. So what is the issue? The government wants to allow 100% foreign investment in India's insurance sector. What is changing? Because till now, foreign companies could own only up to 74% of an Indian insurance company. Now, the government proposes to raise this limit to 100%, meaning foreign investors can fully own insurance companies in India. How will this be done? A new law called Sabka Bima Sabki Raksha, Amendment of Insurance Laws Bill 2025 has been circulated to MPs. This bill proposes changes to Insurance Act 1938, LIC Act 1956 and IRDAI Act 1999. Are there conditions then? Yes, there are conditions. Even with 100% FDI, investments will be allowed only under conditions prescribed by the government. It is not automatic route. Now, why is the government doing this right now? Okay, to attract more foreign capital, to expand insurance coverage, to improve technology, competition, and efficiency. Also, to support the goal of insurance for all. So, what will happen next? The parliament will debate the bill, and only after approval will the new FDI rules come into force. The next article, India Mexico in talks to mitigate tariff hike impact. See, Mexico plans to raise tariffs up to 50% on imports from countries it does not have a trade agreement with. And India is one of them. We have already seen this in detail. Because of this, India's exports worth about $2 billion are affected, especially in automobiles, auto parts, textiles, footwear, leather, iron and steel, etc. The tariffs are being raised under MFN, which is Most Favored Nation rules allowed by the WTO. So India cannot legally challenge this at the WTO. Now we will look into what is this MFN, which means Most Favored Nation. In simple terms, MFN is a basic WTO rule. It means if a country gives a trade benefit to one country, it must give the same benefit to all the other WTO members. No country can be treated worse unless there is a free trade agreement or special exemption. So, in this case, Mexico raised tariffs for all MFN countries. Since India does not have an FTA with Mexico, India is affected. And because it is an MFN based decision, India cannot challenge it at the World Trade Organization. Hope it is clear now. Now, India and Mexico are in talks to reduce the impact. The fastest solution, according to India, is a preferential trade agreement, since a full free trade agreement would take years. And Mexico has clarified that the move is not aimed at India and is mainly to curb Chinese imports. And India's embassy has already raised concerns, and bilateral engagement is ongoing. On the next article for the day, the Oman visit is more than a routine diplomatic trip. Marking 70 years of diplomatic relations, the visit of our Prime Minister to Oman goes beyond symbolism and it reflects deep strategic convergence. Now, why Oman matters to India? The first is it is a trusted and balanced regional partner. Oman has consistently followed a foreign policy of moderation, mediation, and neutrality. Even when the Gulf region was distant from India, Oman kept channels open, making it one of India's most reliable partners in West Asia. Number two, it is a strategic pillar of India's West Asia policy. India and Oman signed a strategic partnership agreement in 2008, and Oman was also a guest country during India's G20 presidency, showing a high political trust. So, what are the key pillars of cooperation? The first is the defense and maritime security. Oman is the first Gulf country with which India conducts joint exercises involving all three armed forces. Indian naval presence in the Gulf of Oman since 2012 supports anti-piracy operations. The Duqm Port Logistics Agreement 2018 gives India access for refueling, maintenance and operational turnaround. And the Oman's location overlooking the Gulf of Oman and Arabian Sea helps India monitor regional maritime activity, including growing Chinese naval presence. The next is the economic and investment ties. Bilateral trade has grown steadily to over $10.6 billion. The Oman India Joint Investment Fund has invested about $600 million in India, and it is a stable source of long term capital at a time of global financial uncertainty. The next is the digital and fintech cooperation. Linking of payment systems through NPCI and launch of RuPay cards in Oman reflects India's export of digital public infrastructure. Now, what are the new opportunities from the visit? The first is the India Oman Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement. There is likely signing of CEPA, which would make Oman the second Gulf country after UAE to have such a pact with India. The second is it helps India diversify trade amid rising protectionism and US tariffs. The next is the energy and green transition. Cooperation may expand to green hydrogens, renewables, and critical minerals, and possibility of Oman storing strategic petroleum reserves in India similar to UAE. The next is the connectivity and geopolitics, because Oman could play a key role in the India Middle East Europe economic corridor, enhancing India's trade and logistics reach. The next is the defense production and technology. Prospects of joint production, supply of platforms like Tejas aircraft, naval patrol vessels, radar systems, and spare parts. The last is the education and health. There is a scope for offshore campuses of IITs and IIMs in Oman and deeper cooperation in healthcare services. See, the Oman visit is not a routine visit. Rather, it reflects India's strategy of building reliable, non ideological partnership in a very volatile region. And Oman emerges as a strategic anchor in the Gulf for India's long term economic and security interests. The next article for the day: does India need to upgrade its biosecurity measures? What is biosecurity? Biosecurity refers to the set of measures and systems used to prevent the deliberate misuse of biological agents, toxins, or technologies. In simple terms, it means protecting laboratories that handle dangerous pathogens, preventing intentional outbreaks of diseases, detecting and responding quickly if such outbreaks occur. Biosecurity covers human health, animal health, and agriculture. And it is different from biosafety, which focuses on preventing accidental leaks of pathogens from labs. And a strong biosafety systems automatically strengthen biosecurity. At the global level, we have this Biological Weapons Convention, which prohibits the development, use, and stockpiling of biological weapons and requires countries to destroy existing stockpiles. Now, why does India need strong biosecurity? Because India faces unique vulnerabilities. The first is the geography and ecology. The long and porous borders increase cross border biological risks. Diverse ecosystems can amplify this disease spread. The second is the large population and agricultural dependence. Any biological attack or outbreak can affect millions. Crop or livestock diseases can threaten the food security of our country itself. Number 3. Threat from non state actors. There have been reports of attempts to prepare toxins like ricin, showing that terror groups are exploring biological tools. Number 4. Rapid spread of biotechnology. The easier access to advanced biotech tools increases the risk of misuse. Now, what is the existing biosecurity framework of India? India already has multiple institutions and laws like Department of Biotechnology, which regulates research governance and lab safety. Then National Center for Disease Control, which focuses on disease surveillance and outbreak response. The next is the Department of Animal Husbandry and Dairying, which oversees livestock and transboundary diseases. The next is the Plant Quarantine Organization of India, which controls agricultural imports and exports. And the legal and policy instruments, if we look at, they are Environmental Protection Act 1986, Biosafety Rules 1989, Recombinant DNA and Biocontainment Guidelines 2017, Weapons of Mass Destruction Act 2005, National Disaster Management Authority Guidelines on Biological Disasters. And India also participates in international biosecurity mechanisms. Despite multiple agencies, India lacks a unified national biosecurity framework because coordination between agencies are limited, response capacity is weaker than direction capacity, and India ranks 66th in the Global Health Security Index with declining scores in effective response. So, this fragmented approach reduces the preparedness against intentional biological threats. So, what is the way forward? India needs a comprehensive national biosecurity framework, better coordination across health, agriculture, defense, and research agencies, stronger laboratory oversight and surveillance systems, and investment in rapid response training and infrastructure. We have to align with global biosecurity standards and best practices because biosecurity is a core national security priority. biotechnology advances, India must move from fragmented efforts to a coordinated, forward looking biosecurity strategy to protect its people, economy, and ecosystems from deliberate biological threats. That's all for today. Thank you all for joining.